hope you're doing well. It's David and Christy back with another episode of The Innovative Leader. And, with 2021, again, we're about toward the end of January. There are all kinds of, transitions going on, especially this week with the inauguration of the new president, those kinds of things. And there are things going on in industry. I mean, for instance, there's this whole stream of hyper customization that creates opportunities for us to see how our organization can uncover additional opportunities to create value, to create products, to create services that customers will need. And so today we want to have a conversation around 3 questions that can help us find the next, you fill in the blank, whatever, whether it's your next opportunity, your next product, your next service, your next goal, your next grand vision of how you can change and impact your community. So we want to talk about those 3 questions a little bit today, so we can explore so we don't limit ourselves, and we can explore various opportunities and various ideas about how to make a difference, how to bring new product, services, those kinds of things into our organization. So today we'll talk about the why. We'll talk about the what if and the why not. And so Christy, let's kind of begin with those questions and your thoughts on those questions. Why don't you go ahead and let's explore that first question of and making sure I had it right because I think I said it wrong.
No, you had it. You nailed it. The why, the what if, no.
All right.
Very. Why not? You got it. Perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say I've filled my brain with a lot of stuff today, and so we just wasn't quite sure I'd said that right after sending it to you. So yeah, let's talk about those possibilities and the opportunities that we have, and we can start with that question, why.
Why? Yeah. So when I think about the question why, a few things come to mind. First of all, and I think for a lot of people, we are all very common. If you've raised kids, and everybody was a kid, even if you haven't raised kids, is the question why. And when you think about a child who is most in their learning state, on one hand, as a parent, it can be a really irritating and annoying question when you don't have time to answer it or when you're trying to get other things done. But it's really a beautiful question that is about curiosity and understanding and trying to understand the world, understand why things are what they are. And so that 2-year-old, 3-year-old question is why? Why are we going here? Why are we doing that? Why? And again, it can be a very annoying question when you're plowing forward and trying to get things done. But especially right now, it's important that we're in this state of curiosity. And when things are changing, when things are shifting, sometimes we do hit these seasons where it's really important to stop and ask why. And why are we doing that? Why do we have our system this way? Why do we have it set up this way? When we're looking to just assess, to reflect, to upgrade, we want to ask that question, why?
All right. It's all right.
Hold on.
Oh, sometimes we have coughing fits and laughing fits, and I know my throat sometimes gets a little raspy, so Christy is Christy's getting some water. She'll be back in just a second.
You can just cut that part out of there. Oh goodness. Yeah, so sorry, had a cough. But I do think there's the childhood why question. And then the other thing that we talk a lot about and we both like is that Simon Sinek, the start with why concept that everybody's so familiar with, and not because that question is his question, but just that he really puts it at the core of why are we doing what we're doing. It's the motivation behind why we do what we do. So I think why is a great question to start with, to come back and to essentially take everything we're doing and just ask why in order to begin to explore. But okay, so David, it's actually your question. So when, when you ask the question why, what are you thinking about? What is the intention of the why for you?
So, from a software developer standpoint, you ask that question because you're trying to get to you're trying to get to the root of what somebody's trying to do. So you ask why, and people I know are get frustrated when you ask that question, or when I have asked that question so many times in a row, simply because um, in their brain they've already processed it. Maybe they've been doing this same role for multiple years, and so they don't think about the why anymore. They just do it. And the problem with that is it's an we've become an automaton, uh, and we never really consider the possibilities that could exist if we didn't do it that way. We're just so
Mhm.
used to doing it one way that the concept of doing it another way just doesn't enter into our brain. And
Sure.
so, in my work, well, the things that I do are try to uncover the motivation, try to get to the root problem, try to get to the real issue, because I might not set it up that way. I, there's multiple ways to do things, and so the and so you want to understand why, if it is absolutely important, if it is not something that is important. You're trying to understand, the basis behind the action, the basis behind the thought. And
Hmm.
so when we come to this idea of trying to uncover the next, it could simply be that if we start asking that question why over and over again and kind of drill down, we get to the realization that we could do this differently, and in doing so actually create the next whatever. That by doing something differently, um, we find new opportunities, uh, and also it kind of gets to the point of, do we really need to keep doing this?
Hmm.
So it helps an organization answer multiple questions, and it also, um, I think it also puts us in a state of mindfulness, as opposed to just doing it by nature and by rote and not even thinking about why we're doing it. I think if the why is always in front of us, that keeps the door open to considering different opportunities in different ways of doing things, different uh, processes and systems, different ways of thinking, different opportunities that might stand before us. So that's when I mean that's an analyst's role, is to ask why. And people hate that question because they don't want to have to think about it. But it also kind of gets into the details and the weeds, and most people don't like to go there either. um, so, but it is the weeds, it is the details where you can find systemic adaptations that make things better, or you can find process adaptations that make things better. And again, ultimately, you're answering two questions: do we still need to do it? And if we do it differently, what opportunities does that present for us?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing with the details and the weeds. And I think you're right that you do ask why in order to get to, even in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, it's a psychological modality of whether it's coaching or counseling or whatever. But one of those processes is really peeling that onion of why, and eventually you're getting down to that root or to that core, which really our core, this is why we talk about core values. It influences so much of what we do and why we do things, is really those core beliefs or those core motivations or values. So I think it's interesting to get down to those details. And I think sometimes there can be something that's not really working efficiently or well in one of those details that could use an upgrade. And if we're not willing to look at why, sometimes I think we can be defensive, as if when we ask the question why, we're saying there's something wrong with the current. And so often, because as humans, we resist change, we like to live by the principle, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So why would we ask the question why? It's not broken. What is there to ask why? Just do it. Don't ask that question. But really, it creates this constant evolution of growth where you could be using something for a long time that isn't really working at its highest level of performance, but we just kind of accept mediocre because it's not broken. It's mediocre, but it's not broken. So let's just ride it, versus what is excellent. And I think the why question is at the heart of continuing to find excellence.
Yeah, and I think from a coaching and a mentoring standpoint, if you keep asking that why, eventually you get to motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a lot of things for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even if you can get down into that um, in a self-awareness level, you could open yourself up to possibilities personally. Again, from a coaching and a mentoring standpoint, personally, that might release you from things that continue to drag you down.
Sure.
So I throw that out there as well. So
Yeah, agreed. I do think it's important too to mention with the why question, I think there's like a why motive. And because I do think that sometimes, especially now, you correct me because you tend to be more the detail C profile in the disc versus I tend to be more that detail D. And we both may ask the why question, but sometimes, and I'm not saying this about you per se, but I think sometimes in the detail profile, there can be the why question that sometimes is asked to stall or delay, versus the intention of our why question. It's like a passive way. Sometimes a detail person will be like, not really on board with this. So it's kind of used as a deflector in a way. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And other personalities, of course, can do that as well, where, why do you want to do that? Why? But that really, when we're asking that question, the healthy why question comes from this motivation of discovery and a true curiosity to understand and to deepen our understanding, versus sometimes we can use that question and go, well, I'm using the why question, I'm being curious and exploring. But if underneath it we're really not on board and we're asking why because we're skeptical or because we're pessimistic or we're negative about something, and we're like, well, why would you do that? Why? Whatever that, I think that piece of it can be, that's not the point of what we're saying. That can be an unhealthy why question, versus what we're really saying is, whether you're moving it forward, whether you're seeking the details, ask that why question from just this place of like sheer curiosity in order to discover more.
Exactly. Yeah. No, the idea of being passive aggressive, or those, that obstinate, that's not what we're saying at all. It's more of this idea of curiosity, because people who are obstinate and ask why, and fight about asking why, are people who don't have a growth mindset, who are not learning oriented. They're more interested in power and control, those kinds of things, and resisting change than people who are really searching for opportunities and uncovering, different ways of doing things, more efficient ways of doing things in some cases. So yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Yeah. Okay. So next question.
Yeah. So the next question is, what if? And this is a huge question. Nancy Duarte, who's a powerful communication consultant out in California, has written several books. She gave a TED talk. I may have mentioned it in the past. She's given a TED talk about 10 years ago, where she went through all of the most powerful. She went through the most powerful speeches in U.S. history, and actually began to uncover a pattern of what made them so powerful. And there were two components to that. There was this back and forth movement of um, discussing reality and exploring a what if. So this is what is, this is what could be. And so I think that second question of what if, what would it look like if we did ...
Mm-hmm.
And I think that opens up this huge opportunity to see how you can impact your community, your own organization, your own person, and the lives of others. What would it look like if we did? Would we accelerate our influence in a global setting? Would we accelerate our influence in a small town? Would we be putting these particular people, maybe underserved communities, providing them opportunities for healthcare and employment and those kinds of things? So it allows you to expand. It's more than just making money. It's more than just here's something new. It's what kind of impact would this look like? What kind of impact would this have if we did ... And I think that question really opens the door to help us think about our organization in much bigger terms than money and power and control. It creates a much more human. It creates a much more human element to everything we do, and it allows us to observe not just the initial impact of that decision, but potentially the unintended consequences of the things that we do. In some cases, what if we did ... It could be detrimental to communities. It could be destructive to the environment. And so it allows us to kind of pull back from when we answer those questions. We can pull back from maybe doing something destructive or degrading, but it also opens up the opportunity to say, here's the bigger impact on culture and community and organization and everything.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Kind of that bigger brainstorm. I think too, sometimes you can ask the question, what if, and you can use it just in open brainstorming. So for example, you could be like, what if I wasn't here on a daily basis and you guys just had to run things? What would that look like? What if John wasn't here and we didn't have this position and you guys were doing this? What if your position wasn't here or whatever, right? Where you you can do that with the team organization to figure out, are too many things leaning on one person and we need to diversify roles or things like that. So you kind of can do the what if question on roles. You can do the what if question on any variable for your business. Maybe your business is in one location. You're like, what if we were in 5 locations? What would we have to do differently? And so it begins to help you to think about, maybe sometimes we get a little lazy in our one location and we're sloppy with some processes. But if we were in 5 locations, we would never get away with just using the bulletin board. We'd have to have some virtual form of communication. So what if, whatever. So it kind of creates new brainstorming, not just because you're sitting there and brainstorming, but because you're actually introducing different variables. And then you could even go to, what if we didn't have internet for the day? How would we operate? What if we had computers in all of our cars? What would that do for us? What if, whatever, right? You just use the what if as this opportunity to create different scenarios that actually are already happening. Because then you can look at your current scenarios too, like what technologies have changed since we set up this system, what positions have changed since we set up this system, what innovations have changed since we set up this system, what's going on in our world. COVID has happened since we set up this system. So what if COVID continues for another 3 years? What then? That's a
Right.
great question, because a lot of times we're planning with the assumption that, okay, this is going to be back to normal by June. Okay, well, what if it's not? What if
Right.
then?
Yeah. So I give you two good examples of in that regard, because this what if question can change the way you do everything. They're two big examples. Um, the question of what if we all worked remote?
Yeah,
Organizations have to answer that question this year, and in many cases what they're finding out is maybe they don't need all that office space.
right.
Maybe they can just communicate, um, and productivity remain the same, with everybody working virtual. That's a huge one. Another, I had to go see my knee doctor, the other day, and I'm on borderline getting a knee replacement. So we were talking about various things, and he said to me, that one of the issues that they're having is hospitals are so full that hospitals are asking doctors not to have inpatient surgeries where they're having to spend the night.
Right.
And and he said we're discovering, as orthopedists, we're discovering that you could give somebody a Percocet and let them sleep during the day just as well at home as you can, in a hospital. As long as everything went well and everything is fine, then you can release them. He said, otherwise, like with a knee replacement, you're spending 3 days in the hospital. So that's taking up beds, it's taking up resources, it's costing a lot of money for insurance companies, a lot of money for patients. And, that person could just lay on the couch and have somebody,
Mhm.
give them medicine and provide food and bend their knee every so often, just like it was going on in a hospital. So, um, you can actually change the way people look at your product or service, or change the way that it completely changes the way. What if we couldn't do inpatient surgeries?
Right.
That becomes a huge question that has had to be answered this year, and it has brought change into the medical community.
Well, and that's what tips to innovation. So
Right.
then sometimes maybe that's a new position. What if we have the floater nurse or the whatever that is, who
The
we have a
physical
system.
therapist who can
Yeah,
go
exactly.
around.
The
Yeah.
physical therapist who goes to the people who had the knee replacement, and this is what they do, and this is the process. Or that we have this new technology system that we're not just doing a doctor's appointment, but we have your little portal that you can log in. Hey, my knee's really hurting. Here's what it looks like. Whatever. Like, there's just different ways that we begin to evolve as we're solving a new problem, that
Right.
we didn't have that problem when you could be in the hospital. We don't need to solve that problem because it worked. But if you can't be in the hospital, now we have a new problem to solve, which gives us the opportunity to innovate and upgrade. That's a great
Exactly.
example.
Exactly.
What, did you have another example?
No, that's it. That just those two. Um,
Oh, the work at home and then the need. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
those two. I mean, we could even think about, how do I keep my restaurant open in the world of COVID? Well, the way that many restaurants have solved that is by partnering with DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats. And so now, McDonald's is
Mm.
delivering. I would have never thought that, even last year. Why would you do that? But the question, it was a necessity. How do I
Right,
survive?
right.
So that what if is kind of that necessity is the mother of
Yes.
invention. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Exactly. And then that kind of goes back to this topic of how do you discover the next, is really through the art of asking these questions. Why do we do that? What is that process? And then what if, and exploring these different variables is where the invention comes from. I was talking to someone the other day, and he was thinking about what business he wanted to go into, which is a really challenging question, right? If you just sit there and you're like, huh, what business should I do? What business should I do? Like, you're just not going to figure it out. You're
Right.
going to figure it out by the exploration. And so,
Right.
same thing with innovation. Sometimes we're like, man, things are really changing. How can we innovate? How can we innovate? And we get really stressed out because we're just staring at that question straight on, saying, David, tell me, how can we innovate? And you start like really stressing out, versus you're going to find it by backing up and asking the questions. And as you're asking the questions and playing and exploring, suddenly the innovation appears.
Absolutely. So let's go on to
Okay,
the
third
last
question.
question. Yeah. Why not? And I think this is the question that helps us overcome the limitations, and the objectors, the people who resist change. And the question is, why not? Why can't we do this? What is holding us back? Is it and it forces people to say, well, you begin to realize that many people are just coming up with excuses, and it exposes that. That's one thing that it does for sure. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing that it does is it peels back everything, so you can say, why not? Why not us? Why not us get involved in X, Y, and Z? What unique proposition do we bring to the table that other people don't? Here's an opportunity. We see it. Yeah, we've been over here for most of our life. Why not? Why don't we start to engage down this road? And then it also helps to help you understand the resources you're going to need to enter into that. This is why we don't do that, because we don't have X, Y, and Z. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Exactly.
go
That
ahead.
last thought, I think, is when I do goal planning, one of it doesn't always happen this way, but I think a very strategic way to do goal planning is you look at what that main goal is, what that main objective is, and then you look at what are the two largest obstacles to achieving that goal. And the reason why you're looking at the obstacles are because realistically, those are the two greatest things that are going to get in your way from making that goal possible. So if you can plan to the obstacle, you are 10 times more likely to accomplish the goal, because you actually identified the obstacle that's going to get in the way and you made a plan to overcome the obstacle. It's kind of like obvious example, like I want to lose weight, and you're like, okay, great, I'm going to work out, I'm going to eat salads, I'm doing this and this, great. And then, like, what is your greatest obstacle? Well, all the Christmas candy in the pantry is probably, I just have this sweet tooth, so probably having the sugar. What? Get rid of my candy? Ugh, whatever, right? But it's like that obstacle is going to sabotage my really great intentions. And to your point, which you were saying, like, you're overcoming the limitations and what holds you back. But if you're saying, why not? Why couldn't we do this? Well, we don't have a big enough team. Well, we don't have an expertise of an engineer on our team, so we wouldn't know how to do that. Okay, great. You just identified some of the largest activities that you need to do to actually make that happen.
Exactly.
Because yes, you can think of these, small, obvious things that you need to do, but the why nots are huge information into the most critical activities that are necessary to make sure that you actually do take the jump and do it, and you plan more strategically. So the why not question, I love that. Yeah, why not is to get rid of those excuses. Why not us? We can do this, but then also, why not? What's going to get in our way? Okay, great. Let's take care of that.
Right. Ryan, is it Ryan Holiday who has the book The Obstacle is the Way?
New
Yeah.
book to me.
Yeah,
The
it's
obstacle is the way.
yeah, he writes. I've listened to it. I haven't read it, but I listened to it. He uses a lot of the Stoics and the Epicureans, some of those Greek philosophical frameworks. And yeah, and the book is called The Obstacle is the Way. And the idea is just what you've expressed, that the obstacle, to get what you want, you've got to go through the obstacles. To lose weight, you've got to deal with the issue of sugar and maybe your sugar addiction. to deal with, health issues. You've got to deal with things, to deal with, to move to the next level. You've got to deal with your own limitations, your own fear, your own questioning, some of those things. And so the obstacle is the way that the way to overcome is going through those obstacles to get what you want. And so when you think about why not, you're exploring those obstacles and creating the potential for you to move through them by planning for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And I think a fourth thing with the why not is really just a reality check. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we can get way excited and we're brainstorming and whatever. And I think it's a really good reality check. So, like, okay, well, why not? Like, is this going to stress the team? Is this going to overload us? Is this what we should be doing right now? This is our off season. Is this a good time for us to be doing this? Or is this not a good time? Why not? And so sometimes it is that opportunity to find the obstacle and overcome it. But sometimes it's like, okay, well, that is the obstacle. Is this the most prudent, wise, and smart thing to do right now? Or we should do this in Q2, or we should do this in the summer, or
Right.
whatever. Like sometimes it's just that reality check of what does this mean? What will this take in order for us to do this? And is that reasonable?
Yeah. Do we have the capacity to do it at the moment? I deal with that a lot. Is this the right time for you to do um, X, Y, and Z? Because here are the consequences of you doing that.
Mhm.
And so that is a why not. Here's why not. Why we don't suggest you doing that at this time. So yeah, another great idea. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's as we look at time and those kinds of things, we're just getting close to wrap up.
Yeah.
Those are three wonderful questions to ask when we're trying to see what's coming next, what's coming down the road, and how we can be involved, how we can make a bigger impact, how we can address limitations, address concerns, and find ourselves moving forward and creating the next great product, great service, a great impact that we want all of our organizations to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as leaders, these are three really wonderful and simple questions to write in your journal and your notes on your phone and then practice it. You don't have to wait for that big strategic planning meeting that you
Yep.
have, with your team. Like, pull out, and as you're writing your goals for tomorrow or you're reviewing your goals, ask, why is that my goal? And what if my goal was twice that size? Or what if my goal was this? And
Right.
why not? Like, go ahead and use the questions even for something small for yourself and get used to using them and practice. It's a really great way to practice that art of curiosity and stretching that muscle. So go ahead and post too for our leaders who are listening. If you do use that, what is your favorite question? Why, what if, why not? How do you use it? How does it help you? And what do you discover as you're trying them out? We'd love to hear.
Absolutely. And love for you to provide comments either on YouTube or whatever app you're using for podcasting. Love to have those comments and reviews, and look forward to coming back next week with another episode.
All right, sounds good. Have a good
All right.
weekend.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.